Welcome to Raven Talk, the official podcast of the Raven Tribe. The Raven Tribe is a home for warriors on the path, and is dedicated to training warriors for the battlefield of life. Visit us on the web at theraventribe.com, where you can learn more information on membership, warrior training, as well as links to our official YouTube channel, Facebook group, apparel store, and our official bookstore, Marshall Books. Welcome back, Tribe. Today we're here with special guest, Sensei Sahnya Thom, and we're going to be discussing deep martial artistry. Also joining us today is Hanjiro, our guest interviewer. Sahnya, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Great. Well, we're looking forward to having you on. And for the audience at home, I would like for you to do us a favor and give us just a brief introduction to yourself for those that may not be familiar with you, a little bit about your training background and about your educational background, which I'm sure plays a role in your interpretation of the martial arts.
Okay. Well, first of all, my training, I'll go back actually and how I started the martial arts. I started at age 9, so it's been a long time. I consider myself a life martial artist, and that's over 35 years ago. And how I got into the martial arts is why I call it deep martial artistry right now. You'll see a little bit of a turnaround with the story. Is because I had pretty extreme anxiety when I was a child. I think I was just one of those unlucky ones that were wired for anxiety and highly sensitivity. So the martial arts for me started at age 9, and I suppose I would consider it more of it called to me. If anybody knows, any listeners know about the hero's journey, Joseph Campbell's journey, I had an early calling for my first genesis, and that was the martial arts. And the convergence of that with my father, noticing that I had anxiety and also having his daughters as a requirement to take self-defense, got me into a very small karate taekwondo club. And I have to say both of them together, even though back then I think it was pretty uncommon. So I was studying karate and taekwondo in a very small city called Ripon, Wisconsin. So that's where I started. And as far as deep martial artistry goes, that it was combined with then my life journey and getting my master's degree in clinical psychology, being a personal fitness trainer of 20-something years, and then now I'm using my martial arts to inform all of my coaching and training at more of a heart level. So it's more, to me, deep martial artistry is a heart-centered journey of not just combat, although that's important, but also healing.
And Sahnya, can you tell us a little bit about how you train your students? There's some multifacets to this, approach that you have, and obviously you're training them in self-defense, but how do you incorporate the lessons, and what are the lessons, in addition to the physical training that you want to share with people?
Yeah, that's a good question. Thank you. I train my clients and students now on a private level. I sort of like you, I kind of took myself, I believe you're still doing this too. You took yourself out of public training, I think. Is that correct?
Yes, pretty much, yes.
Oh. Yeah, and that's kind of what I did too. Not because I don't like teaching classes, but right now I'm just sort of at this teaching level where I'm training people on a private or small group basis, and partly because I believe it's more of this old school garage style training where I'm training the whole person. So the curriculum is based on meditation, contemplative work, journaling, self-defense, and obviously if they need to work through their body to get to their mind, we do a lot more fitness training first as an entrance point. So it's not a one-size-fits-all, and that's why I think I took it to the level of more private training and small group training so that they really get the full me at my best. I used to own a school, so I went that route for about 10 years, from 1997 to 2007, and I had the school in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So I know both ways, and I don't think there's a right or wrong way. It's just where I find myself right now. It's just more of the private training.
And Sahnya, let me ask you, how do your students respond? What difference do you see in the students compared to the students you worked with in a group setting in a more traditional martial arts class as opposed to this new approach?
I think there's benefits to both. The private training, I think they respond. I think they have a lot more connection with me because I'm able to give them more of my attention and focus. I do have high standards with them because we were meeting privately, so they get an awful lot of homework, and I do actually check in with them. So there's a little bit more of that personalization to them. And that's where the coaching and I suppose my clinical psychology background gets woven into that private training. And I train their mind a lot. Their mindset, to me, mindset is about 80% of everything, and then the rest is method and technique. So, we work with, let's say, for example, somebody has PTSD or, has anxiety issues like I did back when I was a child. We can actually work through the body and have a little bit more of an intimate approach to the healing with that through the martial arts. I feel like the martial arts isn't taught this way as often as it should be because there's so many tools, and you can, I use the word love a lot. To me, love is absolutely part of the martial arts, so heart-centered and healing. And I think that's kind of hard to teach in a big group setting. These deeper concepts.
Now, you said that 80% of the training, is mindset. What are some of the things that you cover? I mean, do you have a checklist of important concepts that you want to run through with every student, or do you kind of personalize things more to each individual?
That question is good. I actually do a little bit of a checklist because I'm pretty much of a scientist still in my head, and I work with resilience and grit. I'd say their first month of training with me is definitely getting connected or reconnected to their body. And an awful lot of people who go through trauma or have fear-based belief systems are very disconnected to their body. So the first thing we do is we work with reconnection and then resilience and grit and, trusting the body again. And then after that, the mindset training is going to be about, more pressuring them with drills. I'm pretty hard of a trainer too. I know that I'm talking about concepts like compassion and love, but I actually do work with people to the point where they get pretty high fatigue. I want them to feel like they can boundary bash their limits. So, but first I got to build them up with reconnection to their body and breath. By the way, breathing is huge.
Now, how do you think this approach is different from the traditional martial arts that you came up in? Because it sounds like you received a lot of positive benefits from martial arts that helped you in your journey. What are some of the things that you see that might be different or either more beneficial, or just different for the students in this experience?
From the traditional martial arts, is that what your question was?
Yes.
I don't see much of a difference. I feel like the traditional martial arts in my mindset is actually where a lot of the paths are the richest. And so I believe the old ways are actually some of the best ways. And that's just my own personal experience. I think that the martial arts has gotten pretty watered down with these concepts and teaching people to the mindset, the psychology behind it. So I think the traditional to me has a lot of solutions to, I suppose you would say, the world's problems. I think the old ways are some of the great ways.
Hanjido, can I ask you, because you come from a very traditional background, and Sahnya mentioned that some of the martial arts we see today are watered down. Do you see any correlation between the things that you trained in, here and in Japan, compared to this approach that Sahnya's working with? Sahnya?
I'm
Hello?
sorry.
Oh. No, I think
about that.
That's okay. I think we lost Hanjido. The question was for him, but I think we lost him. That's okay.
Okay.
I'll trim this part out. Let me just go to my next question, okay?
Sure.
Okay. So Sahnya, how do you see your training affecting a person's ability to adopt a warrior lifestyle? Is it something that is going to be helpful for them to transition, and also give us some insight into how you define a warrior lifestyle.
I'll answer your last part first because I think it really leads into, the full question. The warrior lifestyle to me is pretty firm and direct to just living your authentic life. So basically, it's bravery to be yourself, and I think that comes from I think if you look around cross-culturally and with all the different systems, I know that you actually did some interviews with Guru Sean Stark and Kevin Secors, and I listened to, by the way, you did an awesome job with this podcast.
Thank you.
People. Yeah, and, I think we all share a very similar, philosophy on the warrior path, because it is about bravery and courage to be yourself, but I think it's more of a heart-centered. Whenever you try to intellectualize things and you're caught up from shoulder above in the head, your students and your clients and even your own path are affected. So the warrior lifestyle to me is taking a very, whole part of your life. And it's not just like training in your laboratory of your school. Your techniques, your skills, all of that on the mat needs to be now spilled over into other aspects of your life, relationships, work, everything that, I think the Raven Tribe has been, already talking about. So that to me is the path of the warrior. And then I use the word of, because another misconception out there, especially in the black belt system, when you go from white to black belt, and by no means am I against that. I think that there's an awesome way of ranking people to more of a holarchy, not a hierarchy, is that you actually, when you go through those paths, you actually start to go through, these deep transformational changes. And I think it's our job as warriors of the path, not to the path, because we're already, if this makes any sense, we're already black belt in a lot of ways. We're practicing it. And every single day is a curriculum for us. The universe, life is a teacher. So as a martial artist, I think the path of the warrior is to take every day and allow our lessons of being, this martial artist, that I think it's our obligation, especially as teachers and leaders, is to pass on the lessons and the forward failures that we've had to other students. And so I think, if this makes sense, I believe it really is a path of and not to. We're not chasing anything. This is it right here. Life is right now. We're warriors right now. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, Sahnya, let me ask you, just to get your insights on this, but, I've had this conversation with numerous guests that we've had on and individuals in their private life, and the martial arts are kind of a funny thing. We talk about, inner peace and responsibility and virtues, and then we say, and we use this, vehicle to get there and to practice these things. And the vehicle can often look very violent and very rough. And I think that some of those things have changed. There was a time when martial arts, we have a tagline in the Raven Tribe, and we say that, we're training warriors for the battlefield of life. But there was a time when warriors, their life was the battlefield, and they were living, the practical aspect of the martial arts, per se. Now we find ourselves, I'd say the majority of martial artists are not, professionals in a high-risk profession, whose life is a battlefield. And so we start to look at taking martial arts and applying it to everyday life instead of just that battlefield. And it's an interesting contrast, I think, to where martial arts originated and to where it's come today with us, and how we, the average person, again, not the professional soldier or police officer, is applying that in everyday life. What are your thoughts on that, on that kind of shift in the way the martial arts worked and how it's working for us now?
Mhm. Yeah, I really like that about training warriors in the battlefield of life, because I feel like a lot of, especially with my clinical psychology background and some of the internships I had to do, I feel like it has a lot to offer still, and very relevant and valid today, the martial arts, because it can teach us stress management skills and, as I said before, resilience and grit. You don't want to go over far too over to the other side and not, I still believe combat and self-defense is very important because there's something primordial and primitive to actually, using that reptilian brain. And so I think that you look back at I don't know if you were in Taekwondo, David, but remember the 5 tenets?
I'm familiar with them, yes.
Yeah, and you look at the courtesy and integrity and perseverance and self-control and indomitable spirit, and I feel like those are still so valid. And in the battlefield of life, I think those are our values and actions still, and those are our virtues, and you can actually train those as aligning with those and getting through some of life's hardships. I mean, no matter what, you're always going to have curveballs thrown at you. Some of the listeners, I'm sure, are probably nodding their heads that they've been through a lot of transformations that may or may not have been chosen. And I'll tell you one thing for me, that when I go through personal, hardships and challenges, I definitely re-anchor myself in the martial arts. I go work out. I go hit the bag. I go do the speed bag. It is my ultimate anchor. So I think it's, the martial arts is extremely therapeutic and very necessary. Yeah, I might walk out in the driveway right now and not worry about, having to go to battle physically, but life is hard. I think it's a great system curriculum for anybody. I have somebody who's training in the martial arts right now that's, in her 60s, and totally helped her with a lot of things that she's going through, including cancer.
Sahnya, let me ask you, the martial arts are a unique kind of endeavor, and the warrior lifestyle is something that is also unique. This is a very small percentage of the population, I think, would kind of fall into what we consider having a warrior mindset. And I've always, been of the firm belief that some people are born to it. Like you said, it called you, and, that's a good example at a very young age. And I think for other people, it can actually be kind of scary. They get kind of put off by what they might perceive as, violent endeavor, maybe too physical. They may just question, what's the point? Why would I want to learn how to use a knife or a gun or a stick to hurt somebody else? And, that's a big portion of the population. The world needs every type of person. That's understood. But like you said, there's a lot of value and there are a lot of benefits to living as a warrior. What are some of the hurdles that you've run into, and maybe how have you overcome that with, new students that, may be a little bit gun-shy about, participating in martial arts, and, even maybe not just on the physical level, but just kind of adapting that warrior mentality and, applying it to their daily life?
And I come from the perspective of, obviously being a woman. So a lot of my clients, not saying I don't have male clients, but most of them I would say are women. And, that's a major question and challenge all the time with women. I do get sometimes those women that just really love to hit things, but I'll tell you, it's really hard to get, a woman who's freshly starting the martial arts, first of all, to walk across the mat and just to enter a martial arts school or a class is very difficult and intimidating. And then second, to have them actually hit something, a bag or a focus target. That can be very alarming and jolting to them, especially if a woman has been through something. At the same time, it's necessary. Now, I've had some women who have been through trauma and have had sexual abuse, and it's very empowering, but you can't just have them do that right away. I believe I use my intuition quite a bit when I teach and train. One thing is, getting reconnected to the body has to be from the breath and centering and grounding. So that's the first thing I'll do, especially if I see them being very intimidated and, not feeling comfortable with any kind of contact. You just have to kind of ease them in. It's a gradual step-by-step process. But eventually, the clients and the students really almost crave it. They almost really like to get into the nitty-gritty of the physical. We're just students of energy, and usually how I teach it. We're just students of energy, and I don't try to downplay it, but I try to make it, accessible to them and not so uncomfortable.
Sahnya, that leads me to my next question, and I want to ask you as a female instructor, and as a female warrior. The society that we live in, and I might catch some flack for this, but the society that we live in is very much guilty of teaching women for an entire lifetime that kind of role is something that they're not supposed to be participating in. They're not supposed to be partaking in. What kind of challenges do you have in that respect? I have a daughter. She's 7, and I've had her in martial arts since she could walk. I mean, she's been coming to my classes. I literally used to set up a playpen in the classroom, and she's always been around it. She takes, formal lessons now. And I'm very conscious of the fact that I want to make sure that she understands that that's a role that she is, completely entitled to take if she wants. But a lot of women are not so fortunate. And, we encourage little boys to be rough. We encourage them to horseplay and wrestle and do things, but not so much with the women. So I would imagine that, and I've encountered it with female students that come to me later in their life, their 20s, 30s, and want to learn martial arts. But how, I'm assuming that your perspective might be somewhat different as a female yourself, but, what have you seen in that regards, and how do you tackle it?
Well, I think that, you're right. Still to this day, I don't believe women are socialized to be aggressive. My hope is that things are changing. I feel things are changing. I've surrounded myself with people that have been so empowering, and so I personally don't feel it as much as possibly other women do, but I'm very sensitive to it. And I guess the times have changed since I first began in the 1980s. When I was 9, I can tell you that I was the first. I definitely was the only girl for a couple of years. And if anybody came through the dojo that was a girl, they didn't stay. So I don't know what was in me that, made me stay. I think it was a sense of community and belonging to a little dojo. But I find a lot of hope in now the schools and dojos and small group classes that they can offer women that this is a lifestyle that can be adopted by anyone. When I first started, I can tell you that I was not treated indifferently. So I got very lucky with that. If a man or a boy was doing 20, 30 push-ups next to me at age 9 and 10 years old, that's what I was expected of doing. So I think it has an awful lot to do with the teachers. If any girl or woman goes into a class, and I know you probably, I'm sensing that you would agree with this, you got to check out your teachers. If they're treating somebody any differently than another gender, I would say just walk out.
Now, Sahnya, martial arts are not a one-size-fits-all, and it often gets taught that way. But especially with women, there's a lot of differences. I might catch some flack for saying that, but I celebrate the differences, not restrictive differences, but they're differences. Women, on an average are smaller, they're lighter, they can't hit as hard, because of their body frame. I have one student, she was like a gymnast, and she must have weighed 89 pounds at the most, and she just couldn't get her body into some of the movements that some of the men were able to do easily. What have you had to do, because I know that you are also very conscious of effective self-defense for women. What are some of the things that you've found that maybe you have to adopt or change in teaching women?
I think that goes back to, I agree, I think, there's obviously always going to be physiological differences between the male and the female frame. Although I will tell you there are some pretty scary women out there that are very strong. But it's not the norm, and I would say it goes back to when I was talking about how I would first initially teach the foundation of breathing, centering, and grounding, and finding the center of gravity. And then, of course, like leveraging the strengths. If somebody is quick, there's obviously you don't want to be teaching something that's not effective for their body frame. And I think that's where it comes down to the individual. And women definitely, when I fought in the ring in the early 2000s, I was scared of women because they have a lot to prove. Back then they did. So they can be very aggressive. Channeling and, using that energy to focus is is very important too. Like how to, that's one thing about the martial arts too, is that you can teach how to channel focus and attention. We are what we attend to. So using all of those skills for women is important, and getting them to trust their body. I really think that's a huge obstacle too for women, getting them to trust their body and to break through that psychology of extending and being vulnerable and hitting, and just getting, and sometimes we have to fail forward and to learn and then just do it again.
Sahnya, let me ask you about something I discussed with one of our other guests, Sue Gartsky, and we were talking about women's self-defense, and we see a lot of things labeled as women's self-defense. I personally am not a big fan of the concept for a couple of reasons. I mean, I think that a women's self-defense class or seminar, there's some benefit there initially for women that may be a little bit intimidated because they're used to being, aggressive or rough, and also they have an opportunity to work with other women, which kind of takes down the stress a little bit. But yeah. I think, and this is just my personal thoughts, I want to get your opinion. I mean, any self-defense training is good, but my personal view is that most of self-defense training that is going to be useful to anyone, men or women, is something that comes from your mindset primarily. And I don't really believe that can be conveyed in an 8-hour seminar or a 4-hour workshop. You can teach a few tricks, but, it's not, how reliable are they going to be? How likely is it going to be that person is going to be able to pull that out? So I guess what I'm trying to say is that I believe that men and women, to get any real benefit out of training, it has to be a prolonged training. It has to be something that, becomes a lifestyle, at least to a certain extent. And it's a mindset that has to be brought along slowly and integrated, because not everyone is born with that very, aggressive mindset. What are your thoughts on that? Where do you fall on the women's self-defense, model?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. And, I might get some flack with this answer too. But, I got to tell you, I have the hardest time teaching it. Anybody who knows me and is close to me knows that's not my favorite thing to teach. Exactly the reasons why you just said. I don't think, it's not like it's not going to be beneficial or of value to somebody if they take a 3-hour workshop and learn self-defense techniques. But I don't want that to trump any other thing of prolonged training. And if that's, I would rather have somebody committed to like a 3 months, 6 months, more than that actually, prolonged training to get to really know their strengths and their power and their speed. I think to me, that's all mindset training. It's very difficult to teach that in even a full day workshop. So it's really my least favorite thing to teach. And if you notice, I don't even advertise that I teach self-defense. So I totally agree with you on this. And, I'm not saying it wouldn't help. And I have actually heard some success stories of people that have had to use some of their self-defense training that they only took like a month of. But I would always encourage prolonged training with a good instructor.
Now, Sahnya, if people are interested in reaching out to you, if they're in the Midwest and want to come out for personal training, or if they even just want to correspond with you and, maybe have some type of distance mentoring, how can people reach out to you? How can they find you on the web? Where can they find you for training?
Yeah, thanks for asking. I actually have a website that's called ninjayourlife.com. So that's ninjayourlife.com. You can also email me at Sahnya, the Ninja Coach, @gmail.com. And let me just, I need to just talk about the word ninja. It's not because I'm a ninja. It's just because it's about hacking your, obstacles of you being great. That's what ninja's about to me. Like, ninja in your life. Like, let's get rid of those things that are standing in your way.
Excellent. Well, Sahnya, thank you for making time to speak with us today. I really appreciate you being on, and hopefully we can get you on in the future for some more talks.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time, too, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Great having you. Great speaking to you. Thank you again.
Thank you.